Okay. Let's try this again. I got interrupted right as I started. Part 2. The new printing press's trial run. Now then, what story should we start with, I wondered aloud. Everyone from the Gilberto Company had since left, and I was now at my desk in the High Bishop's chambers. I needed to blast out a manuscript as soon as possible so that we could try to making a text-filled book using the new printing press. There were several tales about knights among the collection of stories I had written down over the winter, and by using those as a base, it wouldn't be too hard to put something together. Maybe I should start by printing something short, with one goal ultimately being to create a collection of knight stories. Gail responded with an affirmative nod. Given that this is a trial run, I think starting with a small manuscript would be best. After talking it over with him for a bit more, I settled on writing a story with a happy ending. In it, a knight would hunt a fey beast before gifting its face done to his beloved. A few days later, I completed the reasonably thin knight short story. Come 7th bell, it was time for me to listen to my attendance reports on the day, so I took this opportunity to tell Gail and Fritz that I was done. Gail, Fritz, the manuscript for the short story is now finished. We shall do the typesetting in the afternoon on a sunny day to limit the children's access to the workshop. Please pass this information on to Lutz. Furthermore, please decide with Fran who is going to be present in the workshop to observe the trial run. As you wish, Gail replied promptly. Fran momentarily fell into thought and softly crinkled his calm, dark brown eyes. Gail, I imagine that you wish to participate in the typesetting as well. So I shall take the children to the forest. Please listen closely in my place, as you will need to learn the process well enough for the both of us. You can count on me. Lady Rosemine, are the illustrations completed too? As this printing session will consist entirely of text, there's no need for us to wait on illustrations. We'll be using mimeograph printing from them, as we already have been. Oh, but I do intend to ask Wilma if she can begin the new illustrations. You may send her a message so that she knows about this ahead of time. The next afternoon, I excitedly headed to the orphanage with the completed manuscript in hand, planning to ask Wilma to draw the accompanying illustrations. Wilma, I would like you to draw illustrations for this night story using Ferdinand's face as a reference. Lady Rosemine, I believe doing that will only lead to you earning the High Priest's ire once again, Wilma said with a worried look. But I had an ancient, unbreakable blade at my disposal passed down through my family for generations. There is no need to worry, we're only using him as a reference, after all. The knight in the story is someone entirely different from the High Priest. For one, they do not have the same name. It will also be clearly stated in the book that its contents are mere fiction, with any similarity to actual people, living or dead, or actual events being purely coincidental. Oh my, you always have a trick up your sleeve, don't you? Well, that actually does make sense. You can't say it's Ferdinand because it's not. Wilma asked, her eyes widening in complete awe, but she then looked up at the ceiling and thought. In that case, I will modify the hairstyle and the like so that he appears different enough. Thank you ever so much, Wilma. Think nothing of it. I have such a delightful time drawing the High Priest that when he banned our illustrations, I was more depressed than anyone. My partner in crime said with a giggle. I had successfully secured the pictures I needed. We'll print them as usual once we finish printing all the text. Plus, we're going to be using an entire page for the illustration, so there's no need to think about size or where to put the letters. You don't need to hurry either, since the pictures won't be added right away. Understood. I stood up, having finished my conversation with Wilma, which encouraged the kids playing in the corner of the dining hall to come rushing over. Lady Rosemine, are you making a new picture book? What's it about? The picture book about the autumn gods had been completed while I was attending spring prayer, and the workshop was presently in the middle of making one on the winter gods. They were curious, therefore, what my next one would be about. It seemed that my plan to raise the orphans into bookworms was going off without a hitch. Oh, it's definitely working. Once I finish the book about the winter gods, I'll be making a collection of night stories, but I'm not sure you all will be able to read it since it's going to be filled with text. We'll make sure we can. Learning new words, it's so much fun. The collection shall be based on stories that I've gathered from noble children. I am very much looking forward to all of you one day writing new stories for me too. We'll practice so we can get good as writing, the orphans said, their eyes brimming with motivation. The sight warmed my heart. I wanted them to keep up this enthusiasm in hopes that it would drive them to make books of all kinds themselves when they grew up. Teaching the orphans their letters and the art of enjoying reading was all an investment so that I myself could have more books in the future. The day had finally arrived. I completed my morning work, eager to typeset for a movable type printer for the first time, and planned to tear through lunch so that I could get to the workshop as soon as possible. Fran, I said as he served my food, I would like to wear throwaway clothes since I might be getting dirty on the workshop this afternoon. He furrowed his brow at my request. My sincerest apologies, Lady Rosemond, but under normal circumstances, The daughter of the Archduke could never engage in the work herself. For that reason, you do not own any throwaway clothes. Wait, what? But the ink stains will most likely be permanent. Will that not be your problem? I asked, pinching my white sleeves of the High Bishop robes I usually wore, and holding them up to him. Getting black ink on this white cloth would be a major issue, and I couldn't imagine it was acceptable for the High Bishop to go around wearing dirty clothes. There are still several robes in the orphanage director's chambers from your days as an apprentice shrine maiden. Might I suggest using those? The only consideration is that you will need to change in the director's chambers, and you should attempt to stay in your High Bishop robes as much as possible while in the temple. The only clothes in this closet were those suited to the High Bishop and the Archduke's adopted daughter. I had gone to the orphanage director's chambers many times since becoming the High Bishop, but I wasn't allowed to open its closets and the like myself. I hadn't known that my old clothes were still in there. In fact, my assumption had been that they were burned or something to hide my commoner origins. Oh, I had no idea they were still in there. Thank you ever so much, Fran. And so I headed to the orphanage director's chambers with Monica and Daniel to change into something from my days as mine. Amid the several sets of clothes in the closet, I found my Gilberta Company apprentice outfit that I used to wear, and my heart immediately twinged with nostalgia. I shall change into these. After all, these are the only clothes without frilly sleeves. Monica looked over the outfit, then nodded. They are certainly the most suitable for work. I pushed my arms through the apprentice clothes, feeling an even stronger wave of nostalgia wash over me. They were a little tight on me, but nothing that I couldn't wear. Plus, the fact that they were tighter meant that I was actually growing to some extent, though that too emphasized how much I had changed since becoming mine, which was sad in its own way. Or since being mine, I mean. Gil finished his lunch just as I had finished changing and came to join us in the director's chambers. Monica, I shall head to the workshop with Gil. You may use this time to help Wilma. I imagine she's fairly busy right now due to the illustration job I gave her. As you wish, you may leave it to me. After sending Monica to the orphanage, I went to the workshop with Gil and Daniel. I've sent everyone outside so that you can go a little crazy with the typesetting if you want, Gil said, proudly puffing out his chest. Fritz had taken everyone to the forest so that I could handle things in the workshop myself. It was their first time going there for papermaking this spring, so they had all left in a rush of excitement. Oh, it was Fritz, not Fran, I'm sorry. Daniel gave a small smile, having been dragged along to all this. I would rather you make it so that she doesn't go crazy at all. When books are involved, you would need the power of Mestinora, the goddess of wisdom, to keep Lady Rosemine contained. Do you have such power at your disposal, Sir Daniel? Gil asked, indirectly suggesting that he had absolutely no idea how to control me. There was no way I was going to hold back in the face of a new printing press, and it seemed Gil understood that as well as Let's now. I see. In that case, I suppose I should pray to Mestinora later on, Daniel said, quickly giving up on containing my rampage himself and instead resorting to praying to the gods for help. Well, if you're going to go out of your way to pray to Mestinora, you might as well ask her for some insider tips on how to further advance printing technology. We reached the workshop soon enough. I spotted Lutz already lining up the necessary tools, so I called out to announce our arrival. Lutz, we're here. Mine? Lutz exclaimed, turning around with wide eyes. He then slapped a hand against his cheek and shook his head. No, that's wrong. Wrong! Knowing that he was surprised to see me wearing the apprentice outfit, I spun in place and struck a pose. What do you think, Lutz? Bring back memories, doesn't it? It's more confusing than anything. I mean, come on. I even messed up your name there. Wear something else next time, he replied with a pout. These were the only clothes with sleeves appropriate for working in. You might as well give up because I'm going to keep using them, I replied, already heading over to the typesetting stand. I grabbed the lowermost letter type case and grinned at the sight of the gleaming metal within. Let's go. Where are the composing sticks and the inner liner spacers? All the small pieces that Ingo and Johann made are on this shelf, Lutz replied, revealing crisp rows of sticks and spacers. I let out an emotional sigh. Words couldn't even begin to explain how beautiful the pieces looked, and the thought of printing with them genuinely moved me. When I started checking all the drawers of the typesetting stand, I noticed something really bad. Oh no, I can't reach the top. Gil, please fetch me something to stand on. Actually, Lutz began, maybe we should just line up the letter type cases on a work table. That way we can all go through the process together. I nodded in agreement, at which point Lutz and Gil started moving the cases. It was too bad, though. I'd wanted to look all cool working in front of the typesetting stand. Okay, time to start typesetting. Let's see, you did some before when you were printing the text for the picture books, right? This is basically the same, but since the books we're printing this time are filled with letters, we need to make the length of each line and the spaces between them uniform so the text will be easy to read. I explained, handing the manuscript to Les and Gil. Let's you typeset this page, and Gil, you take care of this one. I placed the manuscript on the work table, then handed them each a composing stick. These sticks were slender wooden boxes small enough to hold in one hand. and they were where the several rolls of metal letter types would be assembled. First, place an interline spacer in your composing stick. Yes, I'm referring to the thin, long pieces of wood. Now add as many letters as you can fit. This will determine how long each line is, so make sure there aren't any sticking out. Once that's done, add another interline spacer, then put a setting rule on top. Hey, what's the setting rule for anyway, let's ask, holding up the thin piece of metal and looking it over with a confused expression. I put an interline spacer and then a setting rule in my own composing stick before starting to search for the first letter I needed. The setting rule helps the metal letter types slide easier than they would on top of wood, and it helps to keep all the letters aligned neatly in place. There's the first letter, got it. I grabbed the first letter from the case, made sure it was flipped vertically, then set in the composing stick with a clink. Always start from this side of the stick, okay? Got it. After that, nothing but the sound of clinking metal filled the workshop. When we finished each line of letters, we would set down an interline spacer, take out a setting rule, then lay that on top. Once that was done, we would begin lining up the next row of letters. Our next row of type. Typesetting was very repetitive work. Where's the next one? Oh, there it is. It was my first time doing this, so it was taking me a long time to find each letter. I noticed that Les and Gil were hunting for them with squinted eyes, too. Once we had several letters of text arranged on our composing sticks, Once we had several lines of text arranged in our composing sticks, we'd carefully move the pieces to the galley, a long tray for holding types, and then start adding letters to the now empty composing sticks all over again. As I said, it was repetitive work. It sure takes a lot of time, Lex observed. We'll get faster as we get used to it. I quickly got used to the process, meaning I was able to speedily line up my rows, but my energy quickly started to wane, and by the time I was halfway done with my page, I was already exhausted. Squinting at the rows of tiny letter types had really tired my eyes out. When we had initially begun, I was enjoying myself and making good progress. And when we were finally finishing our pages, I was going the slowest out of everyone. With the pages done, we delicately tied the arranged types together with typesetting strings so that they wouldn't fall out of place. I was so drained that I couldn't actually manage to do mine, so Les had to handle it in my place. And that completes the galley. The typesetting's done, so next step is making the galley proof. This stage will require us to use the printing press, so we might want to send word to Ingo, Zach, and Johan. Either way, for now, I'll explain how to work the galleys to the printing press. I brought the filled-up galley over to the printing press, then put it in place. The printing press itself perfectly matched the blueprints we agreed on, though that much was to be expected given that it had been made by Johan. It had been arranged so that we could print double page spreads, that is, both the left and right pages of an open book together. So let's set the second filled-up galley next to it. We then arranged furniture around the galleys to create the margins before setting everything in place with the wooden frame. This marked the end of our preparations. Now we just need to rub on the ink and do a test print. See how these are marks on the frame? Or there are marks on the frame. Line the paper up with the marks, then press this board down. It was set so that when the paper was being held down by the cover, it would be folded such that it would be positioned right above the galleys. I compared the printing press blueprints with the real thing while continuing to explain how it worked. I'm pretty sure turning this handle will move the stand. Yeah, let me see it. I wasn't strong enough to turn the handle myself, especially now that you're exhausted. But Les and Gil could both manage it on their own. The stand moved just according to my specifications, which made it was incredible to see. As we were utilizing the principle of leverage, this new printing press hopefully wouldn't require as much arm strength as the previous version, making it easier and less taxing to use. So you can print by moving that handle. It won't actually print right now since we haven't put any ink on the types, but try turning it anyway. It should be a lot easier to move than the earlier press. The old press had needed the strength of 2 adults, but Lutz and Gale were managing to operate this new one by themselves. Whoa, that wasn't tough at all. If we could start picking up the letter types quicker, this should make printing take no time at all, Lutz said, his green eyes sparkling with excitement. Meanwhile, Gale was writing instructions for the entire process onto his diptych. Once they both had everything down, our work for the day was done. Okay, I understand now, Gale said, looking up from his diptych. We can bring Ingo and the others to the workshop tomorrow, then do the trial run. Lutz peered over his shoulder at the diptych, then nodded, yeah. And while they're here, you'll be watching, and only watching, like a good high bishop. Did our work today scratch that itch for you? Just a little. Enough for me to stay calm tomorrow. Though it's less that I've calmed down, and more that today's work will probably leaving me too exhausted to move much at all. Ingo, Zach, and Johann came over to the workshop the next day. They were all wearing their work clothes in preparation for the printing test, so I alone stood out with my clean high bishop robes. Now then, shall we begin the trial run for the new printing press? Gil, let's. Please begin. They both nodded, then started putting together the galley proof as we had discussed, rubbing the ink on, putting the paper into place, and setting down the frame. Let's turn the handle while Gil pushed the stand beneath the press as it moved, and everyone watched on with interest and nervousness. The craftsman in particular observed the process with serious glares and furrowed brows. Pushing the handle and using leverage to move the press made the press board itself move with a loud banging sound. Lutz and Gil pulled out the stand and undid the frame covering the paper, then removed the sheets from the press. The small mimeograph printer could only print one page at a time, but here we had printed 2 at once. Phew, they're done. Real good quality, too. So that's printing, huh? I don't know what those pages actually say, but I'm impressed. With the trial run a success, the craftsmen all let out sighs of relief. I smiled upon seeing them all finally freed from the stress that came with having to deliver a working product. Thanks to you 3 combining your talents, we have improved the printing press into something truly wonderful, I announced. I should direct the Gilberta Company to handle the rest of your payment and report your success to the guilds. Winter was a stressful time, was it not? Where exactly did you struggle the most? The stress-free craftsmen went on to explain their respective struggles to me. Well, Lady Rosemont, I was busy all winter thanks to you calling me one of your Gutenbergs, Johann murmured with a sigh. I placed a hand on my cheek and tilted my head. Busy all winter, you say? Should I take that to mean you have found a new patron? If so, I am truly overjoyed for you and will be more than willing to remove you from my Gutenbergs, comfortable in the knowledge that doing so will not deprive you of your work. At that, Johann awkwardly averted his gaze, having clearly not found a new patron yet. Bano's request. With the galley proof done, we need to compare it with the manuscript and correct any mistakes. The more people doing this, the better, since there are going to be mistakes no matter how careful you are. Once the type checking was done, the galleys were corrected, and another proof was printed. Only once all the mistakes were confirmed to have been fixed will we begin printing in bulk, and this process of typesetting and correcting any mistakes form the repetitive bulk of printing. I am very satisfied with this printing press. I would like to order an identical one to send to Haas. Thank you very much, Ingo and Johann replied with nervous smiles. Zach, however, looked somewhat unsatisfied, likely because he hadn't been involved in the actual construction. Don't worry, Zach, I have a lot more schematics for you to make. In any case, by spreading the things I wanted around the world at once, I was causing some serious repercussions in all sorts of places. My influence was more significant than I ever would have thought, and that influence would undoubtedly create fierce competition between workshops, which wanted to make as much profit as possible. As a result, the Gilberta Company would get even more work as they served as my representative and an intermediary between me and the workshops. The problem is, I can't just choose one workshop to give my exclusive business to. I let out a sigh. Zach's creativity and skill when it came to drawing up blueprints was very important to me. But so was Johann's technical abilities that flawlessly brought those schematics to life. There's no way to avoid giving work to them both, but the imperative conflict this would cause between workshops is pretty rough. It would be so much easier if they just combined their workshops into one. Wait a minute, what if you did? I contemplated the idea for a moment, then looked over at Zach. What would I need to do to make you the foreman of a new workshop, Zach? What? Zach immediately looked at me with wide eyes, while Ingo and Johann regarded me with bewildered stares as though I had morphed into some kind of talking fey beast. It seemed pretty clear that my suggestion was a little out of the ordinary, so I hurriedly explained my thought process. I simply figured that Zach and Johann establishing a workshop together would make it a lot easier for me to order things from them both. Since I couldn't just give one of their workshops my exclusive business, my idea had been to establish a smithy containing only my personal craftsmen. Zach and Johann are from different smithies, so taking orders and distributing the pay has been a bit of a pain, right? Well, Zach is sociable and has a bright, active imagination, so I think he would be well suited to being a foreman, while Johann could provide his excellent skills to complete the ultimate workshop. Hold on, look, Johann and I are both the Harls, which means that while we can inherit our current workshops, assuming our respective foremen choose us after we get our Brotherhood certification, of course, we can't become the foreman of new workshops. Wait, really? Zach and Johann went on to explain that while the contracts signed by Lahanges were generally for 3 years of work, those signed by the Harls tied them into a lifetime of employment with that particular workshop. This was done to help the workshop grow, but it also meant that the Harls couldn't go on to own workshops themselves. In other words, no matter where you went, people wanted to keep skilled workers to themselves. A Laharo can have their contract nullified if they're deemed useless or cause too many problems, but Zack and Johan are making a lot of money for their workshops, Ingo added, providing the perspective of a foreman with the workshop. I doubt their foremen are going to let them go. Ingo had apparently aimed to become a foreman since he was a kid, having been confident in his skill from a young age, and given some amount of support from his parents. He declined the Laharo contracts offered to him and instead signed on as a Lahange with various workshops to hone his talents. I see. So that means it wouldn't be flexible for me to establish a smithy exclusive for my Gutenbergs. I lamented, at which point Johan repeatedly nodded in agreement. It's a shame, though. There were many large projects that I wished to start on, and I thought that having my own personal smithy would make giving the orders much easier. But I suppose that simply isn't an option. Large projects? Zack asked hesitantly. I nodded. Indeed. Would you care to design a hand pump for me so that we might draw water from the wells much easier? I'm willing to buy the schematic from you without hesitation. My intention is to give said schematic to the smithing guild for safekeeping, so this way anyone will be able to make hand pumps for themselves in the future. But why? Because the invention will earn more profit than a single workshop could ever use. I would much rather it spread across the world at once. The struggle of drawing water is experienced universally, is it not? Still, I don't understand why you would publicize the schematics, Zack replied. You should always try to monopolize as much of the profits as you can. He and all the other craftsmen looked positively baffled. They were so used to prioritizing earnings for their own workshops that they simply could not understand my desire to begin circulating convenient quality-of-life products. Well, if all commoners think the same way about this, maybe I should figure out a way to earn profit from it just so the craftsmen can understand me better. Maybe I could use this as an opportunity to popularize the concept of a royalty fee? While I shall allow the smithing guild to manage the schematics, I won't be releasing the hand pups for free. I intend to sign a magic contract to the effect that for each one made, Zack and I will be paid a small fee for designing the product and inventing it respectfully. I see. That'll get you some profit while spreading the product around for sure. Ingo replied, nodding a few times while stroking his cheek. Zack also nodded in unit understanding now that I was talking about being paid. What exactly is this thing that you're talking about, Lady Rosamund? I can only guess it's as weird as everything else you've come up with. Well, yes, you're right. It is pretty weird. I explained the theory behind the hand pup's operation as best and as simply as I could. Back in my Arano days, I had researched the subject during a social studies class in which we compared life in the past and present. My group had tasked me with heading to the library and doing the research, which was somewhat of a treasured memory since I was so rarely trusted with things. That said, I hadn't actually made a pump myself. The best I could do was draw out a rough illustration and provide a broad explanation, but Zack listened on regardless, his gray eyes shining with competitive light. So when you move this part here, these parts here, and open the valve... Okay, I think I get it. I'll try drawing up some designs. Do your best, noble Gutenberg. I tapped guild card with Lutz to pay the remaining fees for the printing press, the cost of the new printing press that would be sent to Haas, and the down payment for the hand pup schematics that would leave, dividing the money between the craftsmen, delivering the reports to the guilds, and so on to the Gilberta Company. Lady Rosamund, Master Benno was entrusted with this. Lutz said, handing a letter to Gil, who then gave it to me. I opened it right then and there, and inside there was a brief message stating that Hugo wished to become a court chef. It seemed that he had finished training his successor in the Italian restaurant. If possible, he would like to receive your introduction, Lutz added. It ultimately fell on the Archduke to decide who to hire as a court chef. Sylvester had previously given him a direct, off-the-record invitation, but no more formal documents had been shared or signed. Without me throwing in a word for him, he probably wouldn't even be able to enter the castle or the Norwescourt again. In the end, he didn't find a new partner before the Star Festival. Oh, right, his girlfriend rejected him or something. What with Hugo and Daniel, it feels like every guy around me has been getting turned down recently. Feeling sad about how unsuccessful everyone around me was with romance, I looked toward Lutz. Please tell Benno to send Hugo with you next time so that we might discuss this in person. As you wish. 3 days later, Benno and Lutz visited the orphanage director's chambers with Hugo in tow. He had been made to wear his best outfit, and was practically shrinking in fear as his eyes frantically surveyed his surroundings. It was honestly kind of funny seeing him like that. He had never come up to the second floor where he had been working here as my chef, so I could tell that he felt out of place. After we finished exchanging our greetings and had taken our seats, Fran came over to pour our tea. Like a proper noble, I sipped my tea first and took a demonstrative bite out of the new sweets that Ella had prepared. She had put her all into making them upon hearing that Hugo would be coming. Langues de chat, separated by cream and jam, made from seasonal fruits. She really had been burning with motivation to show her former teacher just how much she had grown. Nicola had told me this information, laughing all the while. Here you are. These are new sweets prepared by Ella. In an instant, Hugo's small, anxious expression morphed into that of a chef. He straightened his back and examined the sweets with narrowed eyes before picking one up, giving it a closer look from various angles, and placing it in his mouth. As he swallowed, his expression turned into a frown. Gosh, he's improved too friggin' much, he murmured, vexed. It seemed that Ella's all-out attempt to make the best sweets ever had successfully wounded Hugo's pride. So, Hugo wishes to become a court chef now? I asked, broaching the subject. Benno nodded. I am told he received an invitation from the Archduke himself, but no formal documents were provided. I hope that you might send word of his decision for us, Lady Rosemine. Is the Italian restaurant prepared to lose Hugo? What did the co-owner Frida have to say about this, I asked. As it turned out, both Benno and Frida had agreed that an Italian restaurant chef going on to becoming a court chef and the castle would bring nothing but good publicity for them. I see. In that case, I have no qualms about sending word that Hugo may become a court chef. Benno sighed in relief, then crossed his arms in front of his chest with the word of gratitude. Hugo did the same. I gave them a brisk nod, then glanced at Hugo for some final confirmation. Please understand, though, you will receive entirely different accommodations from when you were staying in the castle to teach the other court chefs my recipes. You will not begin as a teacher, but as an entry-level cook. Is that acceptable to you? At the moment, you hold the prized position of head chef at the Italian restaurant. Becoming a court chef will send you back to the bottom. Even so, this is what I want, Hugo replied, determinedly clenching his fists in his lap. Furthermore, the recipes that I have taught you up until now have been protected by magic contracts. You will no longer be able to spread new recipes once you are hired as a court chef, and I cannot predict how the other chefs will treat you. Master Benno said that too, but I still want to do this, Hugo said. His resolve was as firm as iron. He wanted to become a court chef no matter what position it put him in. This is also important, but if you enter the noble's quarter as a court chef, you will no longer be able to return to the lower city without your boss's permission. You have a family, do you not? Are you okay with being separated from them? Have they agreed to this? Benno lowered his eyes a little, knowing that I had been forced to leave my own family, but Hugo was unfazed. He simply responded that he desired to become a court chef, even if that meant leaving his family. Why do you so strongly wish to become a court chef? I'm curious, since you didn't seem so invested in the power that the position offered before. Are you unsatisfied with the Italian restaurant? You may tell us if you're having any particular issues as a chef so that we might correct them for both you and the others. No, I don't have any problems with the workplace. It's just, well, it's kind of a personal reason, and Hugo trailed off uncomfortably, at which point Benno started to explain for him, his serious expression belying the amusement in his eyes. Ooh. It turned out that Hugo's ex-girlfriend had started dating one of his neighbors, and seeing them acting all lovey-dovey every single day had driven him to want to leave his home and become a court chef as soon as possible. Oh. So it didn't just end with him getting rejected, huh? That's honestly pretty sad. If you wish to find a new special someone, it would be much wiser to continue working in the Italian restaurant. I am certain you were much more likely to find someone else there. As you surely know already, the court chefs are almost exclusively men. I had researched the castle kitchens out of concern over Ella going there, so I already knew what the male-to-female ratio was like. My observation made Hugo grunt uncomfortably, then firmly shake his head. I've already decided to dedicate my life to cooking. It is your life, Hugo. As long as you don't make a choice you will regret, I am happy to assist. But if you wish to become a court chef solely to escape your current home and workplace, I am willing to hire you with room and board as my personal chef. How does that sound? I asked with a smile. Hugo's eyes bulged at the offer. As far as I was concerned, it would be a waste for a chef as skilled as him to be stuck doing low-level manual labor in the kitchen. Not to mention, as he was going to be leaving the Italian restaurant either way, I would much rather get him under my wing to avoid having to teach my recipes to get more people. I was considering hiring more personal chefs, as Ella is struggling to manage everything on her own. You two have already spent so much time together, and I know that your skills are more than satisfactory. You also won't have to start at the bottom in my kitchen. But I told my family that I'm going to become a court chef, and I'm quitting the Italian restaurant too. Backing down now will be just kinda lame and laughable to anyone who heard. In short, his pride as a man was at stake. Becoming my personal chef would mean following me as I traveled between the castle and the temple, which, from a lower city's perspective, is practically the same as being a court chef. Hugo blinked, froze for a moment, and then shook his head. He's uncertain. Good God. Good. Time to pile on the pressure and make him bend. Plus, you would not be wasting any of the knowledge you previously acquired. Your position will allow you to make all the recipes you've already learned, as well as potential new ones. I intend to send new recipes to the Italian restaurant as well, after all. Oh, and not to mention, in my service, you will have access to the newest cooking utensils before anyone else. Hugo's eyes flickered to and fro, his interest drawn to the new cooking utensils. Benno, who was sitting beside him, watched on silently with an amused grin creeping onto his face. You may also request to go to the lower city while I am staying at the temple. That would surely bring comfort to your family, would it not? Hugo's head was swaying side to side as if mirroring his wavering heart. One more push would do it. Not to mention, my kitchen has Ella, Nicola, and Monica often work there as assistants too. Would you rather not work in a kitchen full of cute girls than the stuffy, man-filled one in the castle? Lady Rosemont, I think I'll take you up on your offer. Yes! Haha, you've got him. He finally folded with a deadly serious look on his face, signing the contract through Benno, who was holding a hand over his mouth to contain his laughter. And thus Hugo, too, became my personal chef. I'll have your room prepared by tomorrow, so have your things ready. Monica, take Hugo to the High Bishop's chambers and show him the kitchen. He need only see where he is going to work. As you wish, Hugo, please follow me. At that, Monica led Hugo out of the orphanage director's chambers. In stark contrast to when he had come in, he looked so pleased that I thought he might even start humming along the way. After watching Hugo disappear down the stairs, I turned to Benno. I've settled on a date for training Otto and the others. The training would be done while I was at the castle during the Archduke conference. My temple attendants were permitted a fair amount of flexibility while I was away, so this would be the perfect opportunity for them to instruct others. Meanwhile, I'll be reading as many books as I wanted in the castle bookroom, or at least I deeply wish that was the case. Ferdinand had instead instructed me to join Wilfried in performing mana replenishment while the Archduke was absent and attending the conference. I thank you greatly for your consideration during these busy times, Benno said, glancing toward the hidden room. He probably wanted to talk about something else in there, so I gave a prompt nod and stood from my seat. Daniel and Gil were moving to the other room, and so I entered the hidden room with Benno, Gil, and Daniel taking a seat once we were inside. Benno sat down as well and met my gaze, at which point he dropped his superficial merchant smile to reveal a sharp scowl. Did something happen, Benno? You know I've been doing more business with nobles lately, right? Yes, let's tell me about how you're complaining through Gil all the time, I replied. It turned out that Elvira approaching him while we were selling learning materials at the castle had led to the Gilberta Company getting an immediate surge in noble connections. And they had been up to their elbows in work ever since. I'm getting more and more inquiries about the learning materials made by your workshop, not just from nobles either, from rich commoners as well, and that's made the owners of other large stores run complaining to the guild about how the Gilberta Company's supposed to be a clothing store, Benno said, scratching his head with a sigh. I'm spread too far out, he continued. Other stores normally wouldn't get up in arms about something like this. But you're involved with it all, and every new business I step into is raking in obscene amounts of profit. People are being increasingly obnoxious about how much business I have with nobles now. When combined with Frida and the guildmaster getting involved, the fact that Benno wasn't really visiting the Italian restaurant much had given other stores the impression that he was merely another investor. But even had this not been an issue, Benno's decision to stay involved with me had gotten him increasingly more work in the printing industry and thus more nobles customers, leaving the other large store owners clamoring for a piece of the pie. Barely any of my new noble customers even realize that the Gilberta Company is a clothing store, which is going to make it harder for Karina and Renee to take over. That's why once you've finished training Otto, my plan is to split off from the Gilberta Company and make a store solely for the printing business. This can hopefully be done before that new fashion you're trying to spread hits the scene. Benno's plan was to divide the store in two so that the profits he was earning from me wasn't concentrated on a single business. I wasn't sure whether that would actually work, but I wasn't an expert on inter-merchant relationships and didn't really have a reason to disagree. So you, Mark, and Lutz are going to start a new store specifically for books. Yeah, all the big store owners who want it in on this new industry that the Archduke started are each going to be sending a Lahange to this new place, he explained. As it turned out, the real reason he was splitting the store was because he didn't want those outsider Lahanges in the Gilberta Company. But I didn't understand why he was being forced to accept them in the first place. Truly, the world of merchants was a mysterious place. Probably because even he, Mark, and Lutz wouldn't be able to handle all of it. What do you need me to do, then? I need a name. Could you think of something up that makes it clear to everyone that the new story has your backing? Benno explained that the Gilberta Company's founder had started by requesting a store name from a noble. They were told to use the name Gilberta, which the founder actually adopted as their own name as well. Does that mean the new store is going to be called the Rosemine Company? Is your new name going to be Rosemine too, Benno? I'm not taking the name, and if you are going to give me one, at least make it male. But to answer your question, no, it doesn't have to be your name. You can come up with whatever you like. Unperturbed by Benno's outburst of anger, I started considering ideas. I had already used Gutenberg as a title for people, but that was nothing stopping me from using the name of someone else involved with the printing industry. And of course I knew more than a few such names. It would be confusing for the store to have the same name as the Rosemine Workshop, so what about going with the Plantain Company instead? Where'd that name come from? It's a secret, I said with a pleased smile, knowing full well that he wouldn't understand the reference even if I explained it to him. Christophe Plantain was a man who had dedicated his life to printing books and notably produced the Plantain Polyglot Bible. Incidentally, Plantain's printing workshop in Belgium was considered a World Heritage Site. The Plantain Moretus Museum was actually located there, and I had wanted to see it with my own eyes someday. Plantain, huh? Well, I'll just be glad you didn't go with Gutenberg again. They come from a similar place, but more importantly, Benno, I really think you should start going by the name Plantain now. Never! He shot me down instantly, but on second thought, it would be confusing to actually have him change his name like that, so this was fine with me. The more important thing was learning from Plantain's example and advancing the printing industry such that we would have 20 printing presses working at full throttle all at once. Jesus Christ, I don't think you'd be able to do that anytime soon. Benno, let's make as many books as we can and sell them at the Plantain Company. I want a workshop that can fit 20 whole printing presses inside. I'll be fine with either a new printing workshop or expanding the existing Rosemine workshop to fit more printing presses. My most purest of dreams only made Benno grimace hard, then flicked me on the forehead. Didn't the High Priest tell you to learn some patience? Oh, right, he did. Gotta contain myself. Or actually, can I just stay like this? I'd much rather go nuts. Of course you can't, idiot. Benno unleashed his thunder, and as he started grinding his knuckles against my head, a sense of peace and nostalgic solace washed over my heart. Oh, how I'd miss these days. But I wouldn't mind him being a little more gentle. Not grinding so hard would be nice too, please. How far have I gotten? I'll do one more. One more chapter. Staying home during the Archduke Conference. Fran, I entrust you with training Benno's men while I'm at the castle. Zom, help him as much as he can. I needed to supply mana to Ehrenfest's foundation while the Archduke and Archduchess were staying in the Sovereignty for the Archduke Conference. So I would be living in the castle from today until the spring coming-of-age ceremony. Rosemine, it is time to go, Ferdinand called out. I gestured for Ella, Hugo, and Rosina to climb into my high beast. Bridget would be riding shotgun as always, and Daniel would be guarding our rear while we followed after Ferdinand. Hugo let out a pretty pathetic shriek the moment we began to ascend, but he quickly shut his mouth when Ella started laughing at him. She was used to flying by now. She'll be fine, Hugo. There's nothing to scream about, Ella said. We all got used to flying in no time. I found it amusing that while she spoke very matter-of-factly, her voice seemed a little brighter than usual. Maybe she was having fun teasing Hugo. I was as shocked as you the first time I flew, Rosina added, but now I find the experience more comfortable than riding in carriages. Your reaction is quite normal. Rosina? Right, Ella. Switch seats with her, Hugo said, sounding openly moved, as though he was just glad to have a beautiful woman like Rosina in his corner, but wow, talking about being blatant. Nobody's allowed to change seats while Lady Rosemine's flying her high beast, so too bad. Ella shot back, turning her head away with a pout. Rosina let out an amused giggle. I wish that I were back there having fun too. Welcome home, Lady Rosemine, and welcome back once again, Lord Ferdinand. We have already prepared for your arrival. Norbert greeted us when we arrived. I wasn't sure what preparations he was talking about, but Ferdinand gave a calm nod as he put away his high beast. Norbert looked over my 3 personnel once they had exited my panda bus, then immediately started giving them orders. Chefs, please head to the kitchen. Attendants, carry their things. Audley, take the musician to Lady Rosemine's room. As a note, Daniel and Bridget, you will not be permitted entry to where they are headed. So you may change places with Cornelius and take some time off. Yes, sir. Daniel and Bridget both took a step back and then kneeled. Meanwhile, Hugo and Ella went with the attendants carrying their baggage belongings to the kitchen, as instructed, while Rosina followed Audley to the northern building with her Harspiel. Lady Rosemine, please prepare your high beast. We shall be walking through the main building for quite some time. It seemed that we weren't heading straight to my room. I morphed Leslie into a one-seater and got inside. Please follow me. I drove behind Norbert and Ferdinand in my one-woman panda bus. Eckert and Cornelius were following as guard knights, while Riard accompanied us as an attendant. Together we entered the main castle building through the back entrance, then climbed some steps to the Archduke's office. Ehrenfest, Lady Rosemine, and Lord Ferdinand have arrived. Waiting inside were the Archduke and Archduchess, their guard knights and attendants, Wilfried, Lampret, and Oswald. Sylvester stood up as soon as we reached the door. There you are, let's go. No sooner had Ferdinand and I entered that Lampret and Eckert stepped outside as guards, planting their feet firmly in place and crossing their arms. The attendants then closed the door behind them, after which Cornelius and a guard knight who served Florencia similarly guarded it from the inside. What in the world is going on? I asked, Ferdinand tugging on his sleeve. The sudden tension in the air was making me a little intimidated. He looked down at me and raised an eyebrow. Did I not explain? You are going to pour mana into the Foundation's magic. Ferdinand's explanation had ultimately been fairly brief, and I was pretty sure that he had said it wouldn't be any different from offering mana to the divine instruments or pouring it into the chalices for the dedication ritual. Whoever could have guessed that it was actually something this serious and closely guarded? I didn't expect there to be so many guards. This matter concerns the magic that forms Ehrenfest's very foundation, Ferdinand implied. No amount of security can be considered exorbitant. It seemed that the only ones still present in the room were the Archducal family and archnobles closely related to them by blood. Sylvester jetted at his chin, directing Riarda and Oswald to undo the tapestry behind his desk. Once it had been removed, I saw that there was a small door behind it. The entrance was fairly small, so much so that even I, of all people, would need to duck my head to pass through. Wow. So that's teeny tiny. Basically, it was more of a smallish window than a door. On its front were seven round holes, 4 of which were filled with face stones that resembled marbles. Rosemine, Wilfried, grip these and register your mana with them, Sylvester instructed, handing us each one of the marble-like face stones. I dyed mine, turning it a light yellow, while Wilfried clutched his to do the same. Then, once we were done, Sylvester fitted our mana-filled face stones into 2 of the slots. You can both go through the door now, he said. Follow me. The archducal couple removed their gloves, handing them to the respective attendants. Sylvester then held his hand before the door, prompting it to swiftly grow in size until it was tall enough for even Ferdinand to walk through normally. He opened the enlarged door, but there was a rainbow-colored barrier of some kind that blocked me from seeing what was inside. Sylvester entered first, then Florencia. I looked around to see who would step through next, at which point Ferdinand placed a hand on Wilfried's back and urged him forward. Go on. Wilfried quickly turned around, a surprised look on his face. Wilfried, my boy, it is time for you and Lady Rosemine to serve as the Archduke's children for the first time. Riarda said with a kind smile, trying to ease the nerves that had frozen him in place. It'll be hard work, but we shall pray that everything goes just fine for you. Shall we enter, Wilfried, I asked, or would you like me to go first? No, I'll go first. With that, Wilfried took a deep breath, shut his eyes tight, and stepped through the door. Ferdinand signaled with his eyes for me to go next. I pushed past the rainbow field, which was like trying to move through a sticky net, and entered the room beyond the door. Wow, it's so fantasy, I cried out silently. I had seen a lot of magic-related things over the past few years, but this entire room was just classic fantasy. It was pure white without any carpets or tapestries, and floating in the center was a face stone slightly larger than a watermelon. Spinning steadily around it were intricate magic circles that had been woven together with the bands of shining mana forming complex letters and designs in an interlocking pattern. It all made the face stone look like some sort of celestial globe, albeit without a stand holding it up. Rosemine, you are in the way. Keep moving forward, Ferdinand said with a glare as he entered last. I hurriedly moved to the side. Ferdinand, what in the world is this room? The hall in which mana replenishment is performed. The pouring of mana into Ehrenfest's foundation. It is made such that only the Archduke and Archduchess can enter, along with any members of the Archducal family who have their mana registered with the door. At the moment, only a few people could enter the room, the Archduke and Archduchess, their children, Wilfried and I, the previous Archduke's son, Ferdinand, and finally, Bonifacius, Karstad's father, my grandfather, and the son of the Archduke 2 generations ago. The face stone registering Veronica's mana had been removed upon her arrest. This makes sense. We really wouldn't want her causing any problems here. I don't know what she could do here, but yeah. This face stone is connected to the foundational magic. Does this mean it's not the foundational magic in itself? Correct. That is located elsewhere, in a place that only the Archduke can enter. Sylvester nodded before adding on to Ferdinand's explanation. The location is hidden so that daughters who get married away Sons who become retainers and spouses from other duchies don't learn where the foundation is. Only the ruling Archduke and Archduchess Archduchess controls it directly. The Archduke was thus the only person who knew where the foundation was. The tight security surrounding it made sense since it was quite literally the foundation that the entire duchy was built on. Rosamund, Wilfrid, you will pour mana into the foundation here while Florencia and I are at the Archduke conference. Sylvester announced, surprising the two of us more than anyone. I looked between him and Ferdinand. Just the two of us? How have you been managing before now? Last year, Mother and Ferdinand carried the burden for us. The incident occurred midway through it, and my uncle Bonifacius picked up the slack for us. It had been during last year's Archduke conference that the previous High Bishop was arrested and Sylvester's mother imprisoned for its criminal acts. I was subsequently assigned to be the new High Bishop, and Ferdinand ended up having to take on over half my work, in addition to his own as High Priest. He was hardly in a position to be frequently leaving the temple, and as a result, they were in quite the bind when it came to performing mana replenishing this mirror. It wasn't normally something to be done by kids who hadn't even entered the Royal Academy, but with the current mana shortage, extreme measures needed to be taken. The process of supplying the mana will prove largely similar to what you already do with the divine instruments, Ferdinand said. I thus determined that it would be more efficient to send you to the castle than for me to frequently leave the temple. I don't know how to do temple paperwork or properly deal with nobles yet, so, well, that was definitely the right call. As I nodded in agreement to myself, Sylvester pulled out a face stone about as large as a ping-pong ball from the leather pouch on his hip. He handed it to Wilfrid. For the mana replenishment, I entrust you with this, a face stone filled with mana. Draw out the mana inside and pour it into the foundation. Wilfrid proudly took the face stone, which closely resembled the ones Ferdinand had given Camphor and Freytic during the dedication ritual. I can more or less guess whose mana was inside, but he probably had no idea what was going on. It seemed unlikely that they were planning to tell him either. Ferdinand certainly wasn't saying anything. I'm going to leave this bag here, Sylvester continued. Keep using these face stones for the mana replenishment, and put any drained ones in this other bag. At that he placed the two bags, one filled with face stones and the other empty, in the corner of the room. Leaving them here was apparently the best security one could ask for. Oh, definitely. We're all going to be filling the foundation with mana today, so it should last until the end of the Archduke conference, but I don't want to return to find it almost entirely empty. It's also important for you to learn the supply process in the event of extraordinary circumstances. As practice, spend each day filling the foundation with small amounts of mana, Sylvester said, walking directly beneath the face stone. Floating amid the spinning magic circles, he knelt and placed his hands upon the floor, and in an instant, both the floor and the walls lit up, shining patterns and letters appearing on them in a similar fashion to the magic circles. Come, Rosamund, this is your position. Kneel in place and pour your mana into this specific location every time. Ferdinand instructed, pointing at a magic circle on the ground. In its center was a symbol representing the goddess of wind. I did as instructed, at which point Ferdinand walked over to another circle and kneeled as well. Wilfrid was kneeling in a third circle, with Florencia doing the same beside him to teach her son how to use the face stone. We ended up in a triangle of sorts, with Sylvester in the middle. With everyone in place, we placed our hands firmly against the ground. Ferdinand checked that everything was in order, then gave Sylvester a small confirming nod. I am one who offers prayers and gratitude to the gods who have created the world, Sylvester intoned, his voice echoing pleasantly throughout the ritual hall. It was the same prayer that I had heard many times before during the dedication ritual, and so I repeated this chant without any problems at all. O mighty king and queen of the endless skies, O mighty eternal five who rule the mortal realm, O goddess of water flue train, O god of fire laden shaft, O goddess of wind Shusaria, O goddess of earth Geduld, O God of life, Aviglabe, we honor you who have blessed all beings with life and pray that we may be blessed further with your divine might. I could feel my mana being sucked out of me, and it was easy to see where it was going thanks to the flow of light coursing through the room. The magic circle surrounding the face stone moved with increasing energy, and I looked around with my palm still on the floor until Sylvester eventually called out, "Enough," signaling for us to stop. I removed my hands from the magic circle and stood up. To my side, I could see Florencia peering down at Wilfrid as he remained on the ground. "Are you well, Wilfrid?" "I'm fine, Mother." But despite his assurance, it was clear that Wilfrid had overexerted himself. He looked sick and his shoulders sagged with exhaustion. It was the first time he had used such an enormous quantity of mana all at once. This much was to be expected, though. Even the blue priest in the temple had ended up drained from the dedication ritual, so of course a child such as Wilfrid would as well. Sylvester scanned the room, his eyes widening in surprise as he reached me. You certainly look well, Rosemine. I thought a sickly girl like you would be the first to collapse. I do this every day during the dedication ritual, so I've gotten used to it whether I like it or not. Plus, it's not like using mana requires physical strength, so you're used to this? Ferdinand, just how hard are you working, Rosemine? Remind me, who was it that gave us more chalices to fill and sent us around the entire central district to boost the duchy's harvest? I am not the one working Rosemine to the bone here. I am giving her more leeway than I have to, and I am giving her potions, Ferdinand said, holding up his head and glaring at Sylvester. As far as I was concerned, having potions at the ready didn't make it okay to completely overwork me. But wow, everyone really has been working me to the bone. I did kind of notice it myself, but it's shocking to hear someone else say it for once. With the mana replenishment complete, I was instructed to rest in my room until supper. I gladly did just that, having Griard fetch me a book. My lady, reading books can hardly be called rest, can it? I feel more at peace, or most at peace while reading. There is no greater rest for me. In what felt like the blink of an eye, it was time for supper. Wilfred was already at the dinner table when I arrived, still seemingly rather tired. The same sickly expression from before was clear on his face. In retrospect, that was probably how I looked when I was being broken to pieces by my devouring heat, and looking at him reminded me of the days where I would end up bedridden from exhaustion each time my mana went on a rampage. I'm sure I've gotten stronger, huh? A little bit. Maybe not physically, but you definitely are getting somewhat stronger. As I reflected on just how long a road I have walked to reach this point, Ferdinand suddenly expressed his frustration. Are you listening to me, Rosemine? Not at all. May I ask that you repeat yourself? Ferdinand massaged his temples as the archducal couple held back their laughter. I blinked innocently in response, at which point he simply let out a sigh and continued. You shall stay in the castle, supplying mana until the spring coming-of-age ceremony. I assume you know this already, but I wish to emphasize that you are not to cause trouble. Focus on your business here, and take care not to do anything unnecessary. Of course, fear not. I will stay in the book room and cause no problems whatsoever. I won't do anything but read, I said with a big nod, finally in my element. Hold on, let me make sure that that's still recording. Okay. Dang it, go away. Sylvester started to say that with me in the book room, they really didn't have anything to fear, but Ferdinand interrupted him with a firm headshake. Sylvester, there can be no relaxing with her. She truly intends to do nothing but read. That is why we must continually give her tasks to complete. He saw right through me. You're too cruel, Ferdinand. Would you truly deny me my blessed reading time? Silence. Maintaining a balanced life is even more important for one as weak and sickly as you. We must assign Riarda to keep a constant watch on you to ensure that you dedicate time to mana replenishment, your studies, and exercise without fail. There is nothing more dangerous than giving you too many books. Maybe once she's, physically healthy again, or I should say, for the first time, then she should be fine with reading books, but not right now. After finishing supper with us, Ferdinand instructed Riarda to monitor me closely and then return to the temple. I could see my reading time vanish before my very eyes. Curse you, Ferdinand, why do you have to be so mean? Goodbye, Father, Mother, Wilfred intoned. You wish you a safe journey, I added, following his lead. 3 days after my arrival at the castle, it was time to see off the archducal couple and Karlstedt, the knight commander, on their way to the Archduke Conference. Several guard knights, attendants, and scholars had already been sent on their way, with the only remaining family being Wilfred, Elvira, my brothers, and me. Elvira, I entrust things to you in my absence. Indeed, Karlstedt, you may count on me. When my family was saying their goodbyes, Karlstedt and Elvira looked over, which was my signal to intrude into their circle. I wish you well at work, Father. Indeed, be sure to fulfill your duties well, Rosemine. My father remains at the castle. Should anything happen, you may ask him for help. He would never refuse a request from his granddaughter. It seemed that, in the absence of the archducal couple, Bonifacius would be the one ruling Ehrenfest. I didn't know too much about him since I had only briefly greeted him during my baptism and winter socializing, but the way he was built made him immediately identifiable as a musclehead just like Karlstedt and my brothers. He hadn't joined us in saying our goodbyes, as he was already in the middle of performing his duties as the acting archduke. That'll be all, Sylvester said, stepping onto the teleportation circle. I'm counting on you two. Don't slack on your studies now, Wilfred, Florencia added, following suit with Karlstedt. The circle showed, and with a flash of light, they were gone. It was such a quick farewell that I was a little taken aback. Just as the loneliness was starting to set in, Elvira turned my way. Rosemine, I feel it has been quite some time since we last spoke like this. It has been hard for us to meet lately. Would you like to talk for a bit, Mother? I interpreted her words as an indirect request for me to invite her to tea, and so I did just that. She nodded in satisfaction, which meant I had guessed correctly. And so Riarda prepared drinks for us in a nearby waiting room. I would be having my tea with Elvira here rather than in the northern building, as with the archducal couple gone, there was no one available to permit her entry. Once our tea had been poured at my request, we were served some of Ella's sweets, with Elvira only reaching for some after I had taken a demonstrative first bite. She then sipped her tea, regarding me with a steady gaze. Rosamine, there is something I must ask you. Yes, Mother? I summoned the Gilberta Company to our estate yesterday, and I was informed of something most interesting during their visit. It seems that you have designed a new style of dress for one of your female knights, She said, her intense smile seeming to add, You did not inform me about this. I inhaled sharply. The style currently in fashion didn't suit her very well, so I simply designed something that would. I did not think it was necessary to inform you of this, Mother. Elvira let out a sigh. Show me the dress, if you would, or that I might see what style you intend to popularize. Mother, I don't intend to start a new trend with this outfit. Come again? Elvira asked, placing a hand over her mouth and widening her eyes in disbelief. Well, any given fashion has some kind of person it doesn't suit, doesn't it? Or some type of person it doesn't suit, don't you agree? All I want is for this style of dress to be available to those who have been excluded by the current trend. I don't intend to popularize it among all the women of Ironfest. If the sleeveless gown I was making for Bridget ended up becoming the predominant fashion, there would inevitably be some prim and proper ladies worrying about it not suiting them. Nobody could control the ebb and flow of current trends, but I ultimately just wanted everyone to have the freedom to wear the clothes they look best in. Rosamine, who in the world does the current fashion not suit? I think it looks wonderful on smaller, more slender women, but not muscular, more athletic women like my guard knight, Bridget. The dresses look too wide on them and make their broad shoulders even more pronounced than usual. Elvira paused and thought for a moment, no doubt envisioning Bridget, who then nodded. Quite. Isn't it unfortunate that women like her have to participate in the Starbind ceremony wearing clothes that don't suit them? All I want to do is give them other options, not start an entirely new trend. Elvira shook her head in response, looking at me with a stern expression. That simply will not do. If we do not establish that you are creating a new trend in fashion, everyone will simply perceive Bridget's new dress as strange and out of place. It was apparently important to inform noble society that I was designing a new style of dress for my guard knight such that everyone else in attendance would regard her with envy. I didn't really understand the noble society too well yet, so I decided it would probably be smart to follow Elvira's advice here. After all, it would completely defeat the purpose of my efforts if it did nothing but bring shame to Bridget. I will examine this new fashion of yours. The fitting has already taken place, yes? When will the temporary sewing be completed? I informed the Gilberta Company that there was no rush, given that I will be absent from the temple for some time. I imagine they will finish some time after the spring's coming-of-age ceremony. That is much too late. Instruct them to hurry and summon them to the castle. The dress will be unveiled to Elvira's faction in its temporary sewing state so that everyone can see what kind of new fashion we were putting into place here. I was told that it would be best to invite several women of a similar build to Bridget who would thus be especially interested in this new style, earning the envy of all those present. Establishing trends sure seemed to be a lot of work. I don't mind the temporary sewing being done at the castle, but could you send word to them for me, Mother? I won't be able to contact them without returning to the temple. Very well, I shall contact the Gilberta Company myself. Sorry, Benno and Karina. Seems like this just turned into a rush job. Okay, I'm going to have to end this one here, and I'll see everybody next time.